It's no secret that Newberg's school district has faced significant challenges over the past couple of years now. And whether you're a parent, teacher, school employee, or just a member of the community who cares about our children's education and well-being, which should be everyone, by the way, it's been a bit rough. Back in 2021, just before Dr. Joe Morlock was fired, I interviewed him to discuss the school district and what was going on at the time. Didn't really get into the political stuff too much, but just kind of in general what was going on with the school district. And if you want to listen to that episode, you can find it under Season 1, Episode 2, back when this podcast was still called the Elpies Project. So this conversation with Dr. Steve Phillips is a bit of a follow-up to that one, but it's a very different conversation because this time we focused on where we're at now, which obviously is different than 2021, but also what it will take to help Newberg's schools thrive again. Hi, I'm Daniel Roberts. I'm a local realtor in Newberg. I'm a member of the Newberg Noon Rotary Club and an ambassador for our local Chamber of Commerce. I also have a separate YouTube channel about the real estate-related aspects of this town. I love our town of Newberg, and I love helping people move here, and I really love sharing stories about all the great organizations and individuals who make this town the great place that it is. And that's really the heart and soul of this podcast, to share stories that inspire people in Newberg and the surrounding area to be inspired, to get involved, and ultimately have a hope for our future. And by the way, I do believe that there is hope for our future. So I hope you enjoy today's conversation with Dr. Steve Phillips as we discuss Newberg's school district. Well, hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to today's podcast. I got a special guest with me, Dr. Stephen Phillips, who has asked me to call him Steve, so I will go ahead and do that. But yeah, this is an interview I've been looking forward to for a while. I know, Steve, you've been here for, has it been close to a year now? I'm trying to remember the
10 months.
time. 10 months. Okay. So you've kind of, you came in the midst of a lot of stuff, and you've had almost a full year to see how things go and what it's like to be the superintendent of Newberg School Districts. So yeah, first off, thanks for joining me today. Glad to have you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So from transportation issues at the beginning of this school year, staffing issues, controversy, you're in the middle of, you had to basically be hired in the midst of your predecessor, Dr. Joe Morlock, being fired. And because of that, you probably created not created enemies, but there's people who, aren't not willing, in my opinion, not willing to really see, okay, at least he's trying. There's people who, have opinions. Obviously, everyone can have their opinions. Basically, what I want to do is just kind of share with the public, kind of give you a chance to share where you're coming from, what you're wanting to do, and ultimately, not that we can really completely put the past behind us. We're still dealing with a lot of stuff, but there's hope for the future, and that's what I want to focus on today is the hope for the future. Maybe we can discuss some of what's happened, but that's just kind of the general theme I want to cover today. So, after your first year, can you just share in general how it's gone and where things are at now?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy. I think it's been a good year. Yes, there's been ups and downs, and I'll be honest, people have asked me, why in the world did you choose to come to Newberg? Uh-huh. And did you know what you were getting into, kind of thing? And, you never know.
Sure.
A couple years ago, my wife and I, we went to, with some other family, we went to Ecuador for about 10 days, and we researched the heck out of it, right? Mm-hmm. We knew what we were getting into. And then we got there, and we didn't know what we were getting into,
yeah.
Right? It was awesome, and some of the stuff we'd learned was dialed in and correct, but other things were surprises, and that's kind of what I think about Newberg. I thought I prepared, and I thought I had kind of the general picture of what Newberg was going to be like, but I didn't,
Yeah.
I have no regrets. I think all in all, it's been a great 10 months. We've learned a lot. I've got 3 kids in the system, and they're happy. My wife's obviously here. She's happy. I'm happy. I think we've done, like I said before, I think we've done a lot of good work. We've had trials. For instance, the busing, that was no fun. I think going back with first students been a good choice.
Could you briefly share what happened there? Because I've heard a little bit, but I mean, because I've heard people say, well, that, it was your job to basically make sure all the routes were correct, and you didn't do that. But then I've heard other things that say that's not quite went down. Are you able to share contractually, like what happened?
Yeah, so, it was well before I came. It was probably 13, 14 months ago that the district decided to open up the RFP. So,
and what's RFP? Sorry, I don't know.
Request for proposal.
Oh, okay.
So open up the contract to another bidder. So they were currently with First Student. And so First Student reapplied for the new contract, and STA, Student Transportation of America, they came in and they did their bid. And the committee at the time went to changing away from First Student and giving it to STA. And so all of their work was, they had I think that decision was made in like January, February. Mm-hmm. And so they had all the rest of that winter and spring and summer to be prepared to hit the ground running in September. And for various reasons, they weren't able to find enough bus drivers. Mm. One of the reasons is just, I think, naturally in the climate right now, nationwide, it's hard for people to find workers.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. There was also some truth to First Student retaining some of the drivers, and they put them in other locations that First Student has contracts with. I think STA assumed that they would get all of those drivers, and they didn't.
Okay.
I don't even think they got half.
Oh, wow.
And so the assumption from STA was, staffing, we're going to be able to hire some, but then we're going to get all the First Students, and then we'll be good. Well, that didn't happen.
Wow.
And so they hit the ground running at a loss, at a short. Right. And so, it was a mess. And, currently it is their job, STA's job, to do the routes, to get kids to school on time. Next year it'll be First Student's job to do that. Is the reality that I'm the superintendent and it all flows down here or up here or however you want to say it on me? Absolutely. But that's why you hire an outside company. You depend upon them to do the job they're contracted to do.
Yeah.
And they feel short, and so we reduced their 5-year contract to 1 year. And so at June 30th of this year, their contract will conclude, and First Student takes over July 1.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's been interesting, and it's been my executive assistant Tabitha, she's done a ton of work with this, and Brett Royer, he's kind of our transportation lead that we brought on partway through. He's done a lot of work with it, it's one of those things that you feel really bad for the kids and the families saying, yeah, you're late for school again because the bus was 20 minutes late. Or, you hear from the high school, and the high school saying, listen, I've got all these kids that are late for math every morning this week,
Yeah.
And it was draining. It was no fun at all. So I really feel bad about the parents that had to deal with that and the students. We had some that reached out and said, we're done. We're just going to bring our kids. We're just going to bring them. And I get that, but there's some families that didn't have that luxury.
Yeah.
And we fell short.
Yeah. So where are things at now? You're not, it seems like that's not still the same thing that's happening, right? So how did they?
Yeah. So we gave them time to kind of fix the situation, and they just could never find enough people. And so we got a hold of First Student and asked them if they would come in and take over some routes.
Okay.
And so STA and First Student, for the majority of this year, have been both running routes.
Okay.
And that's not ideal,
But at least the kids are getting to school.
Yes, and it's better than it was.
Yeah.
It's still not perfect. There's some miscommunication every now and again, and there's still staffing issues. But we had to bring in help for STA. They just didn't have the staffing to pull it off. So First Student, grateful for them to come in and help us out.
Yeah, I know one of the other struggles you've dealt with is with staffing. I know, kind of with the previous administration leaving this. How many staff and teachers were lost during that?
Yeah, there was a lot. I mean, our administrative ranks in every building but two, Ewing Young and Mabel Rush, they stayed the same. But every building, otherwise, they either changed principals or vice principals.
Oh.
So every building had administrative change but two.
Wow.
And the district office was 80, 90%. Yeah.
Why was that? I mean, I guess maybe there's certainly some speculation, but what was your perception coming into that? Like, oh, okay, everyone I thought who's going to know their job is now brand new, including you, is kind of what I would picture.
Yeah.
That must have been a...
Yeah, it's there's a lot of sleepless nights wondering how we're going to get it all done.
Yeah.
You know, I think... So obviously some of the district office staff had a great relationship with Joe. Mm-hmm. And that's wonderful. A lot of them, the HR director / finance director, she followed Joe to Woodburn. Special ed, she followed Joe to Woodburn. Curriculum instruction, Woodburn. 4 of the 5 tech, Woodburn, right? And so, great. You know, they obviously have a tight relationship with Dr. Morlock, and I imagine they're doing great things in Woodburn right now. So that's the kind of the negative is, right? I've lost all these people, and what are we going to do? And as you said, I'm new myself, and I don't really know the players yet, and I don't know all those X's and O's. But the positive side of it is I bring in my own team, and I get to interview people, and I get to find out if people have the same philosophies I do about education, and they're coming into it kind of eyes wide open with knowing the struggles that have been in Newberg and wanting to be here.
Yeah.
I think that's important. They didn't come in blind. I think it's fair to say you don't have all the answers and you don't know all the backstory.
Right.
But they came in knowing that there was some struggles here, and they wanted to be a part of fixing might be a strong term, but they wanted to be a part of working on it.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess one of the main things that and I guess, do you have anything more to share? You think it's helpful to share about how the year's gone?
One of the things that when I talk to people, colleagues of mine across the state or family members, that, you know, at a family gathering in Idaho or whatever, I really brag about Newberg as a community, because I'm amazed at how many wonderful people are here and how many wonderful nonprofits, or, you know, whether it's the Newberg Education Foundation or whether it's the Austin Foundation or whether it's ADEC or whether it's Ford Family or just and tons of churches, right? They're always there. It seems like there's someone willing to step up. Rotary, there's someone willing to step up all the time to help out, and that's unique. That's not in every district.
Yeah. Now, and I don't think I asked, taking a step back, of how you actually came to Newberg in the first place. So you kind of mentioned you had an idea of what you're coming into, but then can you share a little bit about your background, just kind of generally, and then what ultimately brought you here?
Yeah. So real quick, I'm from Idaho. Big family, raised on a farm, dairy farm, so milking cows and growing crops and stuff. I got out of college, or got out of high school, went to college, Idaho State University in Pocatello. From Idaho State, I got a bachelor's and a master's, and my first teaching job was actually overseas in Tonga, in the South Pacific. And so I taught mathematics down there, and in college I played rugby. So when I was in Tonga, I coached a little rugby and played rugby with some adult teams, and then came back and my first teaching job in Oregon was in Burnt River, which is a tiny little district between like Vale and John Day.
Okay.
So it's on it's east.
That's out there.
Yeah, and it's in the sticks. It's tiny. Then it was 100 kids, K-12. Now it's even smaller, about 40 kids, K-12.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the mill dried up, and so they lost a lot of kids, and ranching has changed, and so they've lost ranching families. But it was great. I taught 5th and 6th grade math, 7th and 8th grade math, and then 9, 10, 11, 12. And so having that kind of that whole picture of what upper elementary and middle and high math looks like, I think it made me a better teacher.
Yeah.
To know what's supposed to come before this and what comes after this, so I could prepare my kids better. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I landed in Nessa, Oregon, where I taught for a few more years, and then I jumped into administration. And my administration went from Nessa to ESD in Vail, Oregon, so it was Mau here, ESD. And I was a director there for a while, and then superintendent for a while. From there, I went to Beaverton. I was deputy superintendent for a couple years. And then from there, I went to Jewel, and I was a superintendent in Jewel for a few years, 4 years, and then Newberg.
Okay.
And what always, one of the things that appealed to me about Newberg, Parma, Idaho is where I grew up, and when I was there, they had a really good wrestling program. I think they won state 4 or 5 times in a row, and they're back and forth with another school on state record of state titles. So a big wrestling school. And then when I was in Nessa, and I lived in Nessa for 15 years, they were the same thing for 3A. They were a really big wrestling school. Yeah. And then obviously Newberg's a big wrestling school. And so I just like that kind of, to me, wrestling's a little bit blue collar, a little bit, it's like, yes, it's a team sport, but there's some individual accountability. And when you're on the mat, there's really no one else to blame. It's on you.
Right.
There's no, you can't tag in or tag out,
yeah.
you know? And I like that. I like individual accountability, and I like hard work and work ethic. And so that always appealed to me about Newberg. I also like to think that I'm a bit of a bridge builder. It doesn't matter what my politics are. I like about everybody. Mm-hmm. And I think I can find commonalities in about everybody. Things we can agree on and talk about rather than things we can disagree on and argue about. So I thought I was maybe the right guy for the job, that I could help out.
Yeah. What has your experience been with that? I know there's obviously a lot of division that's taken place in Newberg, and you had a quote, you spoke a few weeks back at City Club. Basically, the general idea is that we have this belief, and really culture, society at large has this belief, if you disagree with someone, you have to be their enemy. And one of the whole reasons I've done this podcast is to help people focus on the good, on the commonality, come together. There's always going to be disagreements. There's always going to be hardship. But I think Newberg specifically, we've kind of been going through some stuff. So what has your experience been with reaching out to people who maybe disagree with you and having conversations?
Yeah, I don't think I've met anybody so far that I've invited into my office. You know, they'll write me an email and want to chat, and I'm very quick to say, come on in, let's meet, or I'll meet you somewhere else, let's talk. That at the end of the meeting, we haven't had some common ground. Mm-hmm. And I like to think that when they leave my office, they, like me a little more or respect me a little more than they did before.
Yeah.
And I like to think I like them a little more or respect them a little more than before. I like the fact that people are unique and people are different. I think that'd be an awful boring place if we were all the same person.
Yeah.
And so I enjoy it. I enjoy meeting people and talking to them. And last night we had a Zoom meeting at 6:00, and it went until a little after 7, and it was talking about this idea of parent rights in schools. And that's kind of a loaded topic, right? If you're maybe on the right side of the spectrum, political spectrum, you're like, parent bill of rights, the schools are, taking advantage or whatever. If you're on the left side, you're just like, that's a right-wing talking point, shouldn't ever be discussed, right? So we had all these individuals there, and to me, it was very civil. We ended with people reporting out on what they think they heard and what they thought the main topics were that needed further investigation. And one of them was we have a policy that talks about controversial issues. Well, how do you define controversial issues?
Yeah, it's a controversial topic to talk about controversial things.
Yeah. I mean, it's what's controversial to you might not be to me.
Yeah.
And this policy was written in 2007. And so, 16 years ago, what was controversial then might not be now, and what's controversial in Portland or Bend or Pendleton might not be here, right? And so that to me was something we all kind of agreed on that, that's a little vague. Maybe we could clean that up a little bit. But then again, how do you clean it up? Because it's controversial. Do we say we want to avoid controversial topics and they are XYZ? I don't really know if that's the answer either. Yeah, that seems tough because, again, if there's a disagreement about what's controversial, that's, that gets kind of tough. You can't, and maybe it's just one of those things you can't make everyone happy, which I think is the case, and I think there will be many. I think my personal opinion, the topics we're disagreeing on, I think there's going to be a lot of continuation about disagreement. And it's not necessarily that we're all going to have to come to agreement, but if there's something that you disagree on that you hold as a very core value, then, that is going to be hard. And how do we have conversations about things when there's disagreements and policies made that affect your children that are things that you strongly oppose as a core value? That's hard. Yeah. And how do we do that in a civil and kind way when we feel, like it's such a maybe injustice or something like that? That'll be, you'll have your work cut out for you. I'm sure. And, but it's not on you. It really is on all of us and how we communicate to each other and how can we disagree in civility. And that's this whole other group I'm with, the United as Neighbors, and this civility project and the discussion groups is actually, we have to learn how to do this. It's not going away. We have to learn how to come together and disagree together. And it's a tough thing. So anyway, not to get too far down that road. But on that note, there's a lot of parents, understandably so, that their children are the most important thing to them, and their education, which is a vital aspect in a child's success. And with the staffing side and the teacher side, we're, as far as I understand, still short teachers, correct? Maybe a couple.
Okay.
It's pretty much status quo. But no, we're still not 100%.
Yeah. And, there's people who've been, a lot of talk of people leaving the district or at least pulling out of public schools, and people make that whatever it is. What is your take on all that?
Well, what's interesting, because I've tried to find, not the silver bullet, but like the silver culprit, like when did it all start? And Newberg's Newberg Public Schools numbers peaked in around 2014, 2015 with 5,100 kids. And then right then it started dropping.
Okay.
It peaked, and then it's been dropping ever since. And so I'm trying to figure out what happened in 14, 15 that started the drop. And I don't really know. I didn't live here, and was there a big shift in real estate prices, or was there, I don't know enough about our board. Our current board wasn't around then. But what happened that they started slowing, and then COVID hit, right? And that trend of down continued. The good news is the administration prior to when I came, they projected that in the fall of this current school year, we would have dipped down to 3,900 kids. They saw this trajectory of continuing to dip, but we didn't. And we're right now at 4,150 kids.
Okay.
And so we are pretty much where we are now. We're pretty much where we were this time last year.
Okay.
And so the kind of the bleeding that started in 14, 15 we hope it's stopped,
Okay.
and we hope to start going back the other way.
Yeah.
But where did those kids go? I can tell you that C.S. Lewis has more than doubled over the last few years. Homeschool numbers have grown a lot over the past few years.
Yeah.
And so, and we're losing kids to Sherwood, and but there are some definite there's growth in other places that you can't ignore. C.S. Lewis doubling in size. Well, yeah, I mean more than doubling in size with a wait list. In fact, we've got some modulars that we had brought in for Edwards during the remodel, and when we're done with them, C.S. Lewis is going to take them because they need more classrooms.
Yeah.
And so, and then homeschool, the homeschool numbers, and we get those homeschool numbers from the ESD. A homeschool family has to register with the local ESD, so we can reach out to them and they'll give us the numbers. And they've grown.
Yeah.
So that's where a lot of our kids have went.
Now, what does that affect? I mean, because I know there's some correlation between, or I mean, it might be completely direct. Like each student, there's a certain number, the school gets paid a certain amount from the state. I actually don't really know how that all works. How does that work?
So, and I don't know how much detail you want, but there's
probably more than the listeners, which you could do it that way you
okay,
want.
I'll try to be quick. There's ADM, which is average daily membership, and it's just body count.
Okay.
Okay, and that's
like how many students are actually showing up to class. Okay.
How many kids are enrolled, and that's the number of 4,150 that I shared. Then there's ADMW, which is average daily membership weighted. And that's how the funding works.
Okay.
And the state of Oregon weights people differently for funding. If you're ELL, so an English language learner, you're not a 1.0, you're a 1.5.
Okay.
Because they consider it takes more money to educate that child, because you have to teach them, the fundamentals of English as well as everything, right? If you're special ed, it's not a 1.0, it's more.
Yeah.
If you happen to be a parent, whether you're the male or the female, if you're still in school, you're weighted higher.
Okay.
And so a 4,200 ADM might turn into a 5,000 ADMW.
Gotcha.
Because it grows, right? And then that's what you get funded on.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it makes some sense. I mean, it is, if you had a school with high socioeconomic and, Lake O, or if you had a school with more poverty and a lot of not so homogeneous, it's more expensive.
Yeah.
And so the model does make some sense.
Yeah. Now, it's been about a year and a half since when I did the interview with Joe Morlock. I don't remember which episode that was. This podcast was still called the LPs Project back then. But he mentioned, because people always talk about, well, Newberg, the numbers are terrible, which, they're not good. But he made the comment that it's really, in many ways, a reflection of the population. Do you agree with that, or what's kind of your take? I mean, obviously there's room to grow, but you can't just say it's just because the school district itself is really bad. Sometimes you have to look at the broader spectrum of who's going to the school. What's your
what numbers is he referring to? State
I think
testing?
test scores,
okay.
And I don't know. I've looked on, like, for example, grade schools. They're rated though on parents who often reach out and complain. Is what I often see. Like, okay, it's got low stars, but then parent has a negative experience because of a disagreement with someone, and then they go on and give it a 1 star. So I don't really put too much weight onto that. But the test scores are the test scores, and I don't even know exactly what they are here right now.
Yeah, they're nothing to shout about. We can improve upon them for sure. Do I think they represent Newberg? No, I don't. I think our teachers are better than that. I think our kids are better than that. I think our community is better than that. I just think it hasn't been a focus. And it's been a focus of mine. I think it's something we can rally around. I would like to think no matter who you are or politically, what spectrum, wherever you land on that, I want to be proud of our school.
Yeah.
I think everybody wants to think that our school does well academically. This is one of the measures that you can kind of gauge how well the school does academically. It's not the only gauge, right? But it's one of them. It's one of them that ODE really cares about. It's one that the newspapers really care about, and I think it's important. So, but I honestly think this is more of an adult problem than a kid problem. And what I mean by that is, if the board and then the superintendent and then the building principals and then the teachers and the parents, if none of us care, then why would a kid? If the kids are hear things like, oh, just burn through that thing. It doesn't really matter. Just get through it. Well, that's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
But if they're told, no, this is, I expect your best and this is important and show what you've got. And I think they will.
Yeah.
And they'll take it more serious. And so there has been years of kind of apathy when it comes to the state testing. And I think that's kind of sad. It does make us look not as good as we are. So I hope to turn that around.
Yeah.
I kind of think if you had an athlete, name the sport, and they were top notch and they were getting ready to go to state and they were going to do well at state and help the team, and then last minute they were just like, Well, the coach would have a heartburn over that. The community would. Everybody would be like, "Come on, you're a leader." Well, I would like that same attitude with state testing. We've got kids that can do great on that exam, and I think they should. I think they should give it their all, just like if you're going out on the mat or on the court. You're one of our best and brightest, and we need you to show off for us.
So what do you think it takes to get to that point to actually really help the school district as a whole thrive?
Yeah, I think we have to talk about it. I think we have to discuss it and be open about we're not where we want to be yet, and it's a. I don't want to blame the kids. I think it's an adult problem, and we just need to change the narrative a little bit. We have great teachers. Now I'll be honest, we haven't had great professional development, and that's something our new team with Jillian and Holly and Brittany and their team are really working on, is more quality professional development to help the teachers do better.
Yeah.
They're great, and they're loving the new PD and the focus on getting training so they can do their jobs better. So yeah, it's going to take time, but I think we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah. You've used a phrase in the past, warm demanders. Can you share what that means to you?
Yeah, I wish I would have made it up because I really do like it, but I heard it somewhere. The idea of a warm demander is they're a warm individual, meaning kids know they care about them. Kids know that they love them. But man, they're demanding. They demand the best from that kid. And they see maybe the kid's future better than they do. Like they know their potential, they see potential in them, and they demand it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those coaches that maybe we've all had that says something, the kids say something like, "Man, I would have ran through a brick wall for that coach."
Yeah.
Well, they do that because they care about the coach and they know the coach cares about them. And so, yeah, a warm demander. You can't be cold. They've got to know you care about them. But most kids want to be pushed. Most kids thrive on structure and moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
And a warm demander can make that happen.
It's interesting. I've read just kind of my own personal professional development of really the power of having, as a student, having someone else, an adult who cares and believes in you. How much, I don't know if you've probably heard of the study where they had the students go in a room, they were all told, "Hey, you guys are the best and brightest students," and they had the teacher said, "Hey, we selected, you're the best teacher, so this is kind of a special class." And so the students all scored in the top percentiles of everything, and afterwards they found out that they were all just picked at random. But because the students thought that they had been picked and the teacher thought that they were special and that the students were special, they had higher expectations and did way better. And even just the subtle ways that a teacher interacts with a student when they believe in them, kind of like that warm demanding, like, what is this? Like, you can do better than that. And they all kind of just had that belief. And just kind of that perspective to me, seemed just so powerful. And it reminded me of just what you were saying of having high expectations. And I think that's what kids really need from everyone, from every adult in their life, and from parents. And I kind of share the philosophy that school is not just the school's responsibility. Education it has to be a team effort of parents believing in the students and wanting more for them, and believing not just you need to get your homework done, but helping educate them of why school is important. School teaches, and parents teach why school is important. That's just kind of my own personal thought. My kids are only 4.5 and 2, so maybe it's really rich for me to talk about the public school system. Maybe when I get older, who knows, I could see things differently. But so I want to move on to a couple other things, because I know I could probably talk to you for hours on this topic. But just about like what's going to take for the district to thrive. We've talked about that. And I guess one of the other things is there's always going to be problems, right? And the easiest thing to do for a parent is to complain, to reach out and say you're not doing your job or whatever. My background has shown that complaining often doesn't really do much. It maybe helps people be angry, but it doesn't actually provide a solution. And I have a very gracious wife, because I don't tolerate just complaining about something if there's no avenue for a solution. That's kind of like husbanding 101, is just listen. And I'll listen, but then say like, okay, but are we just going to keep going through this? And she's actually probably way better at that in many ways than I am. But I think recognizing, okay, if you're not coming forward with a solution, or at least open to that, that's just kind of my philosophy. I'm not a huge fan of complaining. So what is your thought when a parent has an issue, they don't like how something's being done? Maybe there's ways that sometimes that nothing can really be changed, but how do you want parents to handle when they have issues or complaints?
Yeah, and they will. It's interesting because I've got 3 kids in the system, and every now and again I've got complaints. Mm-hmm. And the thing I recommend, and the thing I do myself, is I go straight to the teacher. And I'm like, I'm not the superintendent, I'm the dad. And so can we talk about this? And so we actually have policy around it, but typically it just makes good sense. Start at the lowest level. Don't go straight to the principal, or don't go straight to the superintendent. Go straight to the teacher and try to work it out with the teacher. If you can't work it out with the teacher, then by all means go up to the principal, and on and on. Now, I have to admit, though, that if I get an email and it's from a parent that's not very happy and they want to meet with me, I meet with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I meet with them. I recommend that they start at the lower level, but I meet with them. I want to hear what they have to say. I think that's important. And some people are just prone to complain. Some people, I heard an acronym the other day. It was cave people. What was it? Some people are cave people, complain about virtually everything. And that happens. And I think social media is a huge help with that. Mm-hmm. It gives them an avenue to anonymously throw stones, anonymously take a rumor to the next level. And that's not helpful. I won't use his name, but there was a gentleman that reached out to me the other day, and he's been somewhat critical of the district. But he reached out to me and said, "Hey, I heard this. Can you tell me yay or nay?" And I said, "No, that's not taking place, and we had a back and forth about 5 emails, and I thanked him for coming straight to me, mm-hmm. and he thanked me for being honest about it, and he was able to put the rumor at rest, rather than like going out on his own and posting it and letting it catch fire and blow up."
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate, and I told him, I really appreciate you coming straight to me, and and getting the skinny, because that's just not healthy.
Yeah.
And a few years ago, I went and got my motorcycle endorsement. Mm-hmm. And one of the first things they teach you is where your eyes go, the motorcycle will go, mm-hmm. right? And I think that's true with this. If we're always looking for negative, mm-hmm. that's where we go.
Yeah.
And we've got to knock it off.
Yeah.
I don't think this community is going to heal if we continually look for the negative in one another, look for the disagreements we have. We need to have like an attitude of give them benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. And you'll find whatever you look for.
Yep.
And I appreciate you coming on. And again, that's why I make this podcast, is I want to make it very easy to find the good things. If people have to be willing to look for the good things. But with you, regardless of what people think about you, people may strongly disagree with some of your policies and your philosophies, but you're who you've got. And before we had Joe, he's gone. It's not really a great thing for the district to get rid of a superintendent and move on. So regardless of what people's opinions are, my thought is, well, hey, let's work together despite any differences. It doesn't do anything to promote dissension and animosity. Let's say, okay, this is what we've got. Let's show some willingness to cooperate, and at least say, let's see how we can make this work.
Yeah, I agree. And no matter what, tomorrow's going to come, and we're going to have 4,100 kids showing up. Yeah. And we've got to educate them, and we've got to do our best every day. And so there is a reality to the fact that I tune a lot of it out. Mm-hmm. I just it's not helpful. It as you said, it's complaints and really no solutions, just complaints. I would love to have an email that actually maybe had a complaint with a solution, but that's rare. Yeah.
So one of the big things, I know we're kind of running to the end here, one of the big things happening is school board elections. Now, I know you can't speak specifically to the board members, nor would I want you to, because there's probably people listening to this who are going to vote for any of the candidates running. But just kind of in general, can you explain the importance of the school board? Obviously, there's been no shortage of disagreement and animosity and all that with many of the things that have happened. In my mind, a lot of that, it's an important topic, but it's also been a distraction from some of the most important things of what a school board is actually supposed to be about. And I think maybe some of us have forgotten what the actual role of a school board is and who we should look for in a school board member, just to say, okay, if we want a school board to be functional, can you explain what your relationship is with the board, how that works, and just in general, what people should consider when voting? Yeah,
well, first of all, I would say please vote. I think it's your duty as a citizen. It's your duty as a taxpayer in Newberg. Please vote.
And now even for people who aren't parents.
Absolutely. Please vote. And obviously I won't say where or who to vote for. That's not my role, but please vote. I would love to have a high voter turnout. I think that shows a level of support for the district in general. Now, we have a 7-member board. A single board member has no authority. None. Really, a board member has no authority until there are 4 board members, and then they have the majority. Obviously, a board chair has a little more authority because they set the agenda with me, things like that. They're more involved. They run the board meeting, that kind of thing. We will have a new board. We have 7 board members currently, and 2 of them, their seats are up and they're not rerunning. So no matter what, we'll have a new board. It could be just those 2 new ones, or it could be 5 new ones. We will have a new board. And even with a change of 1, the board changes. The dynamic of the board, the flow of a board. And so July 1, no matter what, we'll have a new board. And that's, to me, that's a bit exciting to have. I like change, and so we can move forward. Now, the basic role of a board is they employ one person, and that's the superintendent. They can't. They don't have the authority to call me and say that wrestling coach has got to go. That would be a bad move in Newberg. But they don't have the authority to do that. They have one employee, me.
Okay.
And by that same token, I work for them. So some people, every now and again, some people will say, "Why don't you tell them what to do? Why don't you?" Well, I work for them. They don't work for me. So there's that reality that I think some people maybe forget or don't understand. Sure, I consult with them, and sure, they might ask me my opinion on things, and I'm happy to give it. But at the end of the day, I work for them.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So that's their role then is to hire you, but also they determine a lot of the policy, right?
Absolutely. So policies come. How policies typically work is the legislators will come up with new laws and new legislation for how schools are supposed to be run. OSBA, which is the Oregon School Boards Association, will then take that legislation and draft policies. Some of those policies come to us and they're required. And there's very little change that can take place. It's basically, this is the new law, you need to adopt this policy. Done. Other policies are highly recommended, other policies are just recommended, and then some policies are just optional. And so they have to weigh out, are we going to approve this policy? It's just optional, I don't really think we need it. For instance, a good example of that would, there might be a policy on charter schools. Well, there are no charter schools in this district. And so do we really need policy on it? Probably not.
Yeah.
Other policies will be special ed, so they come from federal that are required, and you approve them. So they do approve policy, absolutely. And then it's the district's job to make sure that what they've approved actually happens.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and on that note, on April, get the date right, 14th, is it that there's the forum? It's Saturday. It's either...
I think it's the 15th.
Is it the 15th? Okay, you're right, because the 1st is a Saturday. So, yeah.
Okay.
So it's on the 15th. One way or another, find a way to, if you're listening, find a way to get involved or show up or listen to it. But that'll be all the school board members who are running, hopefully all of them, will come and kind of share why they believe they are the right fit. So that's a great way to get to know the board a bit. It's not just about the signs you see around town, who has the most, tally them up and vote for that person. There's a lot more to it than that. So educate yourself. Please do vote. And lastly, what are ways that people can get involved to support the district and the students here?
I think volunteering, from what I understand, volunteering used to be pretty robust here in Newberg, and then COVID came around and kind of shut it all down. We want to welcome, parents, grandmas, grandpas, aunts, uncles, whatever. We want to open it up. Come back in, please. Be a part of our schools. It can be as simple as sitting down with a group of, second graders and reading with them. Or it could be in it'll be in the fall when our new space opens up at the high school with a lot of career and tech ed programs. Maybe you got some time on your hands and you've got some expertise in welding or some extra expertise in machining. It'd be awesome if you could come in and work with some of our kids on that. So I just think a lot of our kids are hungry for good, positive adults, good, positive role models. And I think we've got loads of them in this town. If you've got a minute, come share. It'd be great. I
think it's people have gotten out of the habit with COVID, and I think are still kind of getting back on to getting involved, being out there. But yeah, I would highly agree. I think the more positive role models we can have, I think the better. Yeah. And back to the board, I plan on being at the 15th because I want to learn a little bit more about them as well. Yeah. They might be my new bosses, and the candidates that are running, I've already met with one. I've got another meeting, I think tomorrow, with another one. I'm happy to meet with them. They have some interesting questions about what am I really getting into? Yeah. And I think that's important to, meet with them and kind of give them the real story of, boards are super important, but by yourself, you really have no authority. And so you've got to coalesce around some ideas and you've got to collaborate, or you're going to be out there by yourself
for your whole term.
Yeah. I'd like to see, even with disagreements, if some focus on the commonalities and maybe find ways to talk kindly to each other. That's amidst all of it.
It'd be great to be good, positive role models for our youth.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Steve. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we close out?
I appreciate the opportunity. This has been, it's been good. It's been fun. I really enjoy Newberg. I think it's a great place. I think the sky's the limit, and we can and we frankly owe it to our kids to give them our best every day.
Mm-hmm. And on that note, one thing I'd like to ask is, what gives you hope for the future of Newberg?
The people. Yeah, I think it's a great town. I think a lot of wonderful people, and the kids are. I just believe in kids. Whether they're in Little Burnt River with 100 kids, or whether in Newberg or Beaverton, kids are great, and we owe them our best. And I think they might not today, they might not tomorrow, but someday they'll recognize that they were believed in, and because of that belief, they'll rise. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. It's been great talking to you, and look forward to getting this message out there to everyone.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Givingtown podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend who you think might benefit from hearing it. While more and more people are continuing to hear about this podcast, I still need your help to spread the message about all the people and organizations that make Newberg so great. Well, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next episode.